So for this week, I thought since we were watching kid shows, we were watching Canadian kid shows in particular, let's just squeeze out one more little week of kid show stuff. Because when's a better time than now?
So what's this one, Mr. Rogers?
No, because so we watched the the wacky kind of not particularly redeemable shows first. You Can't Do That on Television and Hilarious House of Frightenstein. Then we watched the legitimate shows like Friendly Giant and Mr. Dress Up. That, educational, good for kids, kind of slow. This one is, I'd say, kind of in the middle. It falls more non-educational, but it's just so good. It's Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh, yes.
So
Saturday morning, Pee-wee's Playhouse.
So we're obviously off the Canadian thing. This is very American. But what made me think of this is when I was living with my friend Craig in Toronto, he was always just playing old stuff all the time. He'd just watch old TV. And he threw on some Pee-wee's Playhouse, and, I always liked it when I was a kid. But this is like one of those shows, like I was saying with that Batman cartoon. It's so nice when you see something that you liked as a kid, and then when you see it now, you're like, holy crap, somebody put a lot more work into that than I appreciated at the time. Like, at that point, I think I was in my early 30s, and we were sitting around watching Pee-wee, and I was like, man, put another one of those on. That was awesome. Like, that was a legitimately really good show. So I thought since we've hit this little bubble of kid shows before we get back to real TV, I keep saying this, but one more week and let's just check out some Pee-wee. So the basic story of Pee-wee's Playhouse, it ran from 1986 to 1990 with 45 episodes. So it's not one of these like thousands of episodes. There was very few. It kind of ran like a real show, like the seasons were relatively small. And in 2004 and 2007, Pee-wee's Playhouse was ranked number 10 and number 12 on TV Guide's top cult shows ever. Like, not just kid shows, all shows. It made this list twice, which is very unusual for a kid show, but I think well-deserved. It's a sign of how this show was not... It wasn't like the other shows, This is like a kid show that... I was saying last week about how, like, I would have a hard time as a producer on one of those kid shows because they're so calm and so slow and so repetitious, and I would be like, what are we doing for the adults in the audience, And you were saying like, yeah, well, the adults aren't paying attention, so why bother? But that's what this show is. This is the show it's a kid show, not so secretly made, so adults will like it. And it totally worked because it right away gained this like dual audience of kids were watching it and adults were watching it. So basically, Paul Rubens, he developed this. He was in the Groundlings. It's like this improv comedy group of people that a lot of them later went on to be famous. So he developed this stage show of Pee Wee Herman, the Pee Wee Herman character, that was way more adult. And so my cousins Stephen and Allison, they had a VHS tape of that Pee Wee Herman HBO like stage show thing, and it was really weird to see it because I saw it later in life, and it's like he's got a little doll that he like uses to look up women's skirts and stuff. It was a lot different from the Pee Wee Herman that I knew, but that's where Pee Wee Herman started. And somehow through this like stage show version that he had that was almost like a cabaret show or something, he got to make it into a movie. In 1985, they made Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which was Tim Burton's first movie. It cost like $4 million and it made $45 million, one of these surprise hits. And it was a great movie too. That really holds up. So because it was such a hit, CBS offered him a cartoon, but he didn't want to do that. He said he wanted to do a live action show with the same budget as a sitcom would have. So each episode of this show was like $300,000. Like, it was not one of these cheap, repeaty kid shows. Like, this was full on. Like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. And he talked him into it. He got full creative control. He got all this money. So, I mean, just the whole way through, it's like, wow, I can't believe it. This guy's just getting exactly what he wants. And he based it on like a 1950s feel, which once I knew that, like his vinyl furniture and just the way Pee-wee looks and...
the little suit, and the little bow tie and the greased down hair.
So I never, it sort of reminds me like Jughead or like Alfalfa and those kids, the little rascals. Like, it has that feeling to it, which I never realized as a kid either. Just, but when I heard that later, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. And he just wanted it to be for everyone, for both people, or like the way they described it is like kind of like like a lot of artsy shit of like postmodernist and just like teaching kids about creativity and stuff, but it really is like it really did pull off all these things. So I just picked season 1 episode 3 because it's called Rainy Day, and I'm like, oh, that seems fun.
Didn't that show shut down because he was accused of some perversion of some kind?
Yeah, I was gonna get into that in the end, but we can do it now. Fuck it, why not? So the show actually was already finished. Everyone assumed that the reason it got canceled was because he got arrested, but after season 5, he decided not to do a season 6 because he didn't want the show to decline in quality.
Okay, yes.
So,
see, I thought it was because of whatever he was arrested for, whatever perversion that kind of put the kibosh.
It was a load of nonsense. It was total fucking bullshit. He was arrested in 1991 in Florida because he went to a porn theater and he got arrested for touching his dick in the porn theater. Like, these detectives went in to the porn theater, looked around to see who was fucking playing with their penises in the porn theater where they're playing porn. Why do you have porn theaters, Florida? Do you really think you're just gonna sit in there and just watch it like a film? Like, the whole situation is absurd.
But I also, I vaguely remember this, but I don't think they just went in. Well, it could be that they just went in and were looking for just anybody who might be doing that. But I think the story was that they were looking for him.
No, I don't think so. That's not what I read.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it was obviously, especially back then, this was 1991, we didn't have the internet. Information was very hard to dispense, and there was a lot
there were things about the show that was very disconcerting to some adults. They didn't feel that it should be a child show. And Pee-wee was kind of marked as to, let's see what we can get this guy on. That was the story going around at the time.
I could see that there could be people that saw it that way. It was definitely a very strange, subversive kids show. But you know, that kind of gets into like that's like writing the story after, I think, more. You know, because
could be
because who are these moral majority people that can control the police? You know, that gets into like real conspiracy theory shit.
Yeah, that's stuff from the 1950s, though, McCarthyism and all that stuff.
Right.
There were the stories at the time is that McCarthyism is not dead. It still exists, alive and well in the United States of America, and Pee Wee Herman was a victim of it. That was just some of the talk at the time.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, of course, yeah, it's like, it is weird to think of the pre-internet world. There's a lot of misinformation now, but it's so much easier to cut through to the actual information, where back then, yeah, it's like, just, I mean, you can bring up a million weird random things. There was like a weird one about Marilyn Manson, that there was a rumor that he was Paul, the best friend, the nerdy best friend from the Wonder Years, because they kind of looked the same. And that wasn't true at all, but a lot of people thought it was true. And then there was another rumor, Marilyn Manson is just what comes to mind for me, that Marilyn Manson had 2 of his bottom ribs removed so that he could bend over far enough to suck his own dick. I mean, those are just examples, but you know, you could come up with 1,000 of them. For every story that happens, there's the weird idea behind it. But basically what I read about this is just that the cops they just did this. They just periodically, like, it's just, to me, it's such an insane... It's like, it's the insanity of America, you know, of like, they're so puritanical, but they have the porn theater. They built the porn theater and they show the porn in it, but these detectives would just occasionally go in, because they arrested 3 other guys, not just Pee-wee. And then when Pee-wee got arrested, he was like, hey, I'm like, 'cause he didn't look like Pee-wee Herman at this point. He had long hair and a beard and stuff. He's like, I'm Pee-wee Herman. Can't we just do like a fucking benefit or something? Clear this up. But no, they went the whole way and they arrested him, and a bunch of his you know, other people in show business that know him all came out to support him. They did some polls, and the polls were like 9-1 on his side, because unless you're a weird religious fucking crank, why would anyone give a shit about this? You know, if there's ever a place to put your hand on your dick, it's when you're watching fucking porn in a porn theater. Like, again, I feel like if you want to be puritanical, that's fine, that's your choice, but you can't have the porn theater and then arrest people for touching their dick in the porn theater. That's what's insane to me. You got to pick a lane here. You got to do one or the other. And yeah, we're just such a shame-based culture. Like, this just followed him forever. It never went away. It's still there, you know? And it's so dumb. It's the dumbest reason you could ever get arrested. It's so nothing. But again, maybe it'd be less bad if he was a normal actor, but because he was associated with this kids show, it was, yeah, it just made it so much worse. So then that was in 1991. He basically just dropped out of public light mostly till 1999. Although even still, he showed up in 92 on some awards show. It just said like, so you heard any good jokes lately? Like still poking fun at like everyone is making fun of me for being the guy who got arrested for masturbating. But he didn't really return to acting fully till 1999. And then by 2006, he started doing Pee Wee stuff again. And now there's a bunch of Pee Wee stuff. There's new movies and Netflix stuff and all kinds of Pee Wee Herman stuff. So like when you look at it in hindsight, it doesn't seem so bad. 91, the show was already done. He was gone till 99, and by 2006, everything's fine again. But at the time, man, that must have sucked. Like, that's a long slog, especially that first 8 years right after it happened. Like, 8 years where you're just like, I'm not even going to try to get back into show business because everyone is just, I'm just a joke now. And it's just so undeserved. Because, again, I just feel like he couldn't have done less of nothing, is my opinion. And I think everyone's opinion. But it's just that, like, weird, like I said, 9-1. Like, there obviously were the people that were like, no, he's a bad man. But they're the same kind of dumb religious fucks that would have said that about a million things that, you can't touch your penis. No. Absurd. Anyway. So yeah, that's the tale of Paul Rubens. But I do think that's interesting, though. You're saying like the different theories about it and whatever, because yeah, like everybody had their thoughts about it. And the big one was that the show got canceled. I thought that too. Everyone thought that the show got canceled because he got arrested because it happened at the exact same time. But all they did is stop rerunning it. Like it was over. But you just can't know the truth about these things. But I'm glad that for all of America's many remaining problems, they're not as bad as that anymore, So anyway, yeah, it all worked out in the end for Pee-wee. And yeah, nowadays, certainly no one gives a shit. And yeah, in the legacy is that he made this sweet-ass show that is awesome.
Well, let's have a look and see if it holds up.
Oh, the other thing that's kind of interesting is Rob Zombie from the band White Zombie, and then he became a director. He's directed a bunch of movies. He was an assistant stagehand guy on this show. It's just like, oh yeah, I could see that because this show's so fucking bizarre and weird. And it's like, yeah, he'd be the guy. So yeah, definitely the opposite, right? Of like, instead of calming kids down, I forgot about the word of the day, where it's like you have to scream and make noise. And not only for the duration of the show, they're like, for the rest of the day, if anyone says this word, I want you to yell. Like, yeah, I can see. I mean, I guess there's like I was saying, there's the adult fan base of this show. But just parents that weren't paying attention must have been fucking annoyed at the show, just making their kids even more crazy. Yeah, I think that's awesome. It's just so much going on. Like every little corner of that place is a new thing, and even like I forgot about there's Cherry, the blue chair that is always in the show, but that other chair, it's like a dog that you hardly ever even see.
It's not my cup of tea. I find him kind of unsettling. He's like he's like this grown man who behaves perfectly like a child. But then all those other weird characters that he's got in it, like that chair is kind of creepy. Yeah. That chair, the big mouth under it, like in the seat, and the big arms, and it's just kind of creepy.
Yeah, you definitely got to get into the tone of it or whatever. Like I think.
But I can see why kids would love that.
Yeah, even just the way he acts is so awesome to me. Like I just love the way he talks. It's so weird. But yeah, and just the weird stuff, like they weren't in this much because they were asleep, but the beatnik dolls, like just stuff that it's like this is where I learned about a lot of this. I guess now that I know too about the 50s influence, later when I learned about the beatniks, I'm like, oh yeah, Pee-wee had those beatniks that were always snapping and doing little stuff. And just weird stuff, like again, she was only in it a bit on the phone call, but Missy Vaughn, just like this chick with a relatively low cut dress for a kid's show and huge breasts. and, and Pee Wee's always a little uncomfortable around her.
As a kid, I would have loved that show, but as an adult,
I mean, yeah, I guess like again, you kind of got to be in the, in the sphere of kid shows. Like I don't really know why Craig threw it on in the apartment. It was a little unusual, but for me, like for a kid show, like if I had to watch one, that's the one I would watch the crap out of that show. And yeah, and when I think about the, just the production budget is crazy. Like the little, it looks like a mouse hole, but whenever they go in there, it's stop motion dinosaurs. I forgot about that too. That has nothing to do with anything. They just throw that in there.
oh yeah, it has lots of action, fast moving.
And yeah, like instead of like I was telling you last week, we didn't record it. It was after we were done recording. But how one of the things I always remembered about Mr. Rogers was this segment where he was trying to teach you how to make a ostensibly healthy snack, and it was a banana. You peel the banana, and then you take a like slice of cheese and wrap the cheese around the banana. And I went and tried it, and it was gross and weird. Like cheese and banana does not go together. But this like trying to make you healthy bullshit, where Pee Wee is like, here's hot chocolate. Here's how you make hot chocolate. And then one of his little puppets is like, aren't you going to put whipped cream on that? And he's like, I sure am. And just like a mountain of whipped cream, so much whipped cream. And even that, he can't just go get the whipped cream. It's another stop motion thing that all the food in his fridge is dancing. Like so much effort compared to, it's weird to compare it to these other shows because it's doing something different, but you don't make 3,000 episodes of something without low effort. And these guys, that's why they only made 45 episodes.
But even the morality part of it, where they were trying to teach you the lesson, like it's not nice to be phoning people on the phone and pulling those stupid little jokes about your refrigerator running. But when you finish watching that, you're not convinced that it's really that bad because it looks like so much fun.
Hey, see, I was thinking the opposite, though, because when he's making these crank calls and he somehow has a video phone in 1986, amazingly, and he crank calls a cop, and the cop is like, you're gonna go to jail. Like, that would legitimately freak out a little kid, I think. I just heard someone recently say that from, like, the younger generation. This chick who's like, she's like 20, 21 now, that she said she, like had her little Nintendo DS thing that you could go online with. And when she was like 10 years old, just to test it, she went to, it's this porn site called Pornhub, and she managed to go there on her Nintendo thing. And she said she freaked out because she thought like, they're going to find out. My parents are going to know I did this. I'm going to go to jail. Like that's that kid thing. You think you're going to go to jail.
Except Buddy, who let him into it, when he goes looking for Buddy, because he's afraid, he's been frightened now. Oh, Buddy's just snoozing away there.
So, I mean, yeah, that would be my overwhelming description. My overall would be weird. It's just weird. It's not necessarily, it's certainly not educational, I don't think. And maybe not necessarily that valuable in any way except to be weird. But I guess, like, that's what I find more. It's, again, I mean, like we were saying last week, I just have a hard time looking at it from a kid's perspective at all. I just want to look at it from an adult perspective. But to me, like, the Pee Wee thing is more valuable as a message to kids, just to go, like, look how creative and shit you can be. Look at the stuff you can make. You don't have to make one of these lazy shows that's just boring. Like, if you put your back into it, look how awesome this can be. And it really is, like, unique among kid shows. Like there is no other kid show with that kind of budget and that kind of work
and that kind of guy either.
Yeah. Exactly. Which again, yeah, I didn't look into that specifically, but it is like I don't know where that character originated from or what the story is. In the movie, in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I was watching that with my Toronto friends, and we kind of came up with this theory because he doesn't have parents. He lives in this big house, and there's like a Rube Goldberg machine that makes him breakfast every morning. It's like the conveyor belts and stuff, cracks the eggs, makes the whole breakfast. So we were thinking like maybe his parents were rich inventors and they died and they left all these machines to keep their kid alive. So he's got his house, he's got the Playhouse, and maybe he just grew up without parents mostly in this house. Like, our theory was he didn't ever leave until he was an adult, but in his mind, he's not an adult. He never got to grow up. So he's this bizarre man child. And it all kind of fits.
Or maybe he's just got the Playhouse and he's got another house somewhere that he lives in. And he just, parents say, get out.
Yeah.
I can't take you today. So he goes to the Playhouse.
But yeah, that, I guess, too, that is so perfect, though, how right away it just puts the stake in the ground of like, yeah, we're not the calm show. We're the show where every week we're going to get you to yell. We want you to scream. So anyway, I think for real this time, that really will be the end of the random kid shows. Because also I think it's not going to get better than that. Pee-wee was awesome. What a good kid show. And again, you could debate whether or not it's valuable as a kid show. Maybe not, but it's something that I would want to watch. Like, yeah, like that's exactly all the stuff I was saying about last week, where it's like these shows are so slow and so repetitious and so calm. And what I want is the opposite of all of that. And that's what Pee-wee is. Although as a kid, I liked both. I thought it was all good as a kid. But yeah.
But again, those slow shows are almost preschool. This
Right.
is preschool kids could watch it, but I think it's more geared for your 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old, 12-year-old.
Yeah, I
and
think
up.
it would be very hard, I think, for a very small kid to even comprehend what was happening. Like, Pee-wee would just be noise. It wouldn't even make sense because it's so weird. But ultimately, yeah, it all worked out. Everybody loves Pee-wee. Everyone respects what he did. He's still doing stuff now. And yeah, his shameful masturbation scandal is more remembered now as like I'm sure it was terrible for him, but in pop culture history, it's like a weird joke of like, man, this is really what we were concerned about back then, eh? Like, we're willing to run a guy's career through the mud for this. Whew. You know, other people have done actual bad things. Let's maybe focus on that. But anyway, I guess it's all relative, though. I mean, you know, it seems pretty bad what happened to poor Paul Rubens, but I guess if this was like the 1600s, they probably would have thought this guy was a witch and would have fucking burned him.
Snake, yeah.
So, you know, I guess it's all relative. Ultimately, maybe it wasn't that bad.
I remember one time as a kid I had a 3DS and I was really curious about like if there were like parental controls on the 3DS. So I went to freaking Cornhub, right? Just to like find out if it was accessible on a 3DS, and it worked. So I was like 10 years old. I almost threw up from anxiety. I thought I was gonna go to jail. I thought I was gonna go to jail. I closed it so quickly. I was like, but they never found me. They never tracked me down.